Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Dani, and today I'm going to tell you all about the books that I read in November and December. Because of my series of 24 booktubers recommending books in December, I ended up not doing my November wrap-up, and honestly I just didn't read a lot, so I thought it would be okay to merge the wrap-up with December. So in November I read 3 books, and I completely failed my M&ms TBR, but I had to travel and it was just not a very fun month overall, so I just scrapped my whole TBR and started to pick up books that I was more interested in reading. So the first book that I read in November, the one that was my most highly anticipated book for the whole year, it's Hollowpox by Jessica Townsend. This is the third one in the Nevermore series, so I'm not going to tell you what this specific one is about, but the first one, if you haven't heard about it before, I highly recommend if you like middle grade fantasy. It's about a girl who believes she's cursed and she's going to die on her 12th birthday, but then when that birthday comes, she's whisked away to this magical land called Nevermore, and there she participates in these trials to try to become a member of the Wonder Society. It's an incredibly amazing, whimsical, adorable book and series, and I've given 5 stars to all of them. I reread both of the first and the second one this year in anticipation for Hollowpox, and I loved it so much. The audiobooks are phenomenal, so I can't recommend this enough. This specific one, again, is still 5 stars. There was a lot here that was very similar to what happened in 2020 in the world, because there is a disease that is spreading in this book, and the way that the people in power behave and people in the streets, and I don't know, it's phenomenal, and I don't know how she wrote this before the pandemic because there's a lot of very similar things. Either way, I absolutely loved it so much, and I really highly recommend this series. The second book I finished in November was an arc. It's called If I Disappear by Eliza Jane Brazier. It comes out in January 26th, so I'm really happy that I was able to read it and reveal it on NetGalley before the book is actually released, because I have a lot of NetGalley arcs that I haven't read yet that were already released. But this one tells a story about a woman called Sarah. She is obsessed with this specific podcast about true crime, and one day the host of the podcast goes missing, and she takes it upon herself to go find what happened. So she ends up in this rural region with some very creepy characters that you never know who is telling the truth, who you should be worried about, who you should be avoiding, and it's very intriguing. I gave this one 3.5 stars, and the reason why it wasn't a higher rating for me was because I think the main character was just not believable. We don't hear anything about her life before. There's a few things sprinkled here and there about her life before she goes on this journey to find the podcast host, but we really don't know a lot about her, and her actions just are very weird and they didn't make a lot of sense to me. But the investigation aspect and the mysterious aspect I really enjoyed. One other thing that I should definitely mention that made me very uncomfortable is the amount of animal abuse and animal harm that is in this book. It's something that I can't read much. Like, it makes me really uncomfortable, and I had to just skim through a few parts when that was happening because it was just very, very, very uncomfortable. So if you're someone who also doesn't like to read about this stuff, I think there are definitely other thrillers that you might want to try, but if you really are interested in this one, I'd say still go for it, because I was able to read it and it was okay in the end. I liked the ending. It was entertaining, but it is something to know about this book. This arc was actually the only one that was on my TBR. I tried my best to fit Hollowpox on my TBR because I knew that I was going to read it in November, but I couldn't. So the arc was really the only one that I read from my M&ms TBR. And then the last one that I read in November was The Humans by Matt Haig. This is a book that I heard a lot about in the past years, and I've been following Matt Haig on social media, and I really enjoy his posts a lot. He talks a lot about mental health, and it's very fun the way that he speaks, and I agree with a lot of things that he says. But this is the only book by his that I've read, so I don't know more than this, but I really, really enjoyed it. And this was another 5 stars for me. This is a sci-fi kind of, but more of like contemporary, that is a story about this alien who comes to Earth to complete a mission. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but he comes to Earth to complete this mission, and he has to become this other human. So he pretends to be this other guy that he takes his form, his looks, and everything, and pretends to be that person. But the main thing about this book is that it's really funny. This alien is basically exploring humanity and trying to understand what it means to be human, and it's a very fun and lighthearted way. So I definitely recommend it a lot if you are looking for something like that. It's just a hopeful read, just something that's going to warm your heart, but it's going to break your heart a little bit at some points as well. I really enjoyed it. There was one scene here, one thing that happened in the book that I didn't like so much, that I thought it was there just to create conflict, and it didn't really have a purpose for this character's lives. But even then, I think the message of the book and the whole idea of the book in the end is just perfect, and I read it at a perfect time that I needed something like this. So this definitely biases my rating to be a little bit higher. There's no way around it. I think ratings are completely subjective to the time when you read a book. At least for me, they are. And this was definitely a 5 stars. Those are all the books that I read in November. But then I started one in November and I finished in like December 1st, I think, which was The Barren Grounds by David A. Robertson. This is a middle grade fantasy that I received in Al Craig Jr. And it's about the story of these two kids who are foster brothers, foster siblings, and they discover a portal to another world. They're both from indigenous heritage, and this world has a lot of what their heritage is about. It's very inspired by indigenous communities in Canada, which is so amazing to read about. It was so interesting. There's a lot to learn here, a lot to explore in this magical land, which I really enjoyed. I had a lot of fun with these kids exploring this world, and I thought that the characters were very real to, especially the girl who's a little bit older than the boy. I think she's very real to what being a young teenage girl is. So I think it was really good. But in the end, I gave this 3 stars because I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was very well constructed, but the whole plot was very convenient. There was not a lot of, I mean, it is a middle grade, but it's still, I was never worried about these kids. And I think that when they are in this world, we could have seen much more of their emotional struggles and not just the physical, like going through a forest struggle and things like that. There was some of it, but I still thought it was not, didn't go deep enough. It was very surface level. This is a series also, so maybe in the next books we will get more of that. We will explore more of that, and I would be interested to seeing what's going to happen next. But I just think the plot, like what happened in the story and the way that it happened, wasn't as intriguing and exciting as the setting and the characters, if that makes sense. It's still 3 is not a bad rating by any means. I really enjoyed it and I really recommend if you like middle grade fantasy. And then in December I started to read The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, but it took me forever to finish it. So I finished it last. So the one that I picked up as I was trying to read The Hero of Ages to try to get me to read some books and feel like I'm progressing in the month was Fullmetal Alchemist volumes 10 and 11. I'm still loving the series a lot. I love these characters. I love this world. If you don't know what this is about, this is a manga that tells a story about 2 brothers called Eric Brothers, Alphonse and Edward Eric. And they're alchemists, which means they can turn things into another thing. And they did some pretty bad things when they were little, and now they're trying to deal with that and change what they did. And it's just, and now I'm in volumes 10 and 11. I can't even start to try to tell you what happened here. But I still love these characters. I still am very curious to see where the story is going. And I can't wait to continue it. I am reading it in these editions, which are still being published, and the next one is going to be published in February, so I still don't know how it ends. I still don't know the whole story, but the whole story was already published, but I want to keep getting these editions because they're gorgeous, so I'm going to keep following in this and just be excited and curious about what's going to happen next. Both were, I think, like 4.5 stars, 4 stars, I don't know. It goes away a little bit from the brothers story to talk about other things that are still important, but maybe that didn't grab me as much. But like the whole series is 5 stars, is one of my all-time favorite series now, so I definitely recommend it. And then I asked you to vote on my M&ms CBR for which of 3 books that I was going to read for the adaptation prompt. And the one that won was The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, which I was very happy about because, as some people said, like, it's the first adaptation that is going to come out, so it made sense that I would pick it up first. The other ones were The Three Body Problem and The Eye of the World, so I still really want to read those, but the one that I picked up because of the poll, not a poll, because of the comments, was The Knife of Never Letting Go. I went into this book not knowing anything about it. I didn't even know what the plot was, and I will tell you what I think you should know if you want to pick this book up. This is a story about this world where people can hear each other's thoughts. And in this world there are only men because something happened in the past that all the women died, and now they're only men and they can hear what each other is thinking. So that means that you can't really keep a secret from anyone, because if you think about it, the other person will know. And also that it gets very chaotic. Like if you hear people thinking around you the whole time, it gets very chaotic at some point. Which I think it's very interesting how the author puts that in the book. Like there are some pages that are all just like a jumbled mess of words, which is basically what the person is hearing at all times. But this, unfortunately, was a very disappointing book for me. It's very fast-paced, which I love, but I just didn't like the characters. I don't like the villains in this book. They're very much villains, just like doing bad things for no other reason. And I don't know, I didn't see a point when I finished it. There's one scene here that's supposed to be very sad and impactful and just to break your heart, and it really did, but not necessarily in a good way. I don't think that was needed for this book. And overall, I don't know, I felt like the characters didn't know what their motivation was. It wasn't even that we weren't told, it's just like they were just doing things because. So unfortunately, it was a really very disappointing book for me. I don't know if I'm going to continue the series, but I will say that I think it does have a lot of potential to be an awesome movie, because it's very action-packed. The cast that was chosen is phenomenal, so I trust that they're going to do a good job at it. I watched the trailer after I read it, and I like the way that they showed like what the person is thinking. So I think it does have a lot of potential, and I hope that they adapted in a way that the bad guys are a little bit better and more developed than they were in the book. But we'll see. I will definitely watch the movie, but I'm not sure that I will continue the series. Let me know if you've read it, if you think that it gets better, if like the characters have more motivation going forward, and just should I continue? You need to convince me very well in the comments, because right now I'm just not feeling it. And then I finally picked up A Darker Shade of Magic by V. Schwab, which had been postponing for so long because this was a 5-star prediction for me. I always like don't pick up books that I'm too excited for, because I'm worried that it's going to disappoint me, and I'm worried that if it's too good then it's over. I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. I should stop doing that and just read the books that I'm most excited for. And this was definitely one that I was most excited for, and I'm happy to report that it was a 5-star for me. It was like 4.5, but I would say I would round it up to 5 stars. This is a adult kind of fantasy. They are very like just like new adult fantasy. I put it as adult in my spreadsheet. And it talks about this character Kel, who is a person who can move through different Londons. So there are 4 like parallel worlds, different dimensions. I don't even remember how they call it here, but it's like dimensions, and each of them has a London. Each of them has different characteristics. One doesn't have any magic, one is full of magic, one is destroyed, so no one can go there anymore. And he's one of the only people who can travel between these Londons. There's also a magic system based on elements, so earth, air, fire, and all that, which I'm not going to go too much into because it's explained more as the book goes. And one thing that I can say about this book is that I was really worried it was going to disappoint me, because by the half point of the book, I still didn't see the point of the story. I didn't understand what we were doing here. The magic system was not very well developed for me, and it didn't have a purpose really. But then, after the first part, right around the middle of the book, we get not a twist, but just like a purpose for the story and a motivation that I thought was just a lot of fun. It reminded me a little bit of the Lord of the Rings, just what they have to do in this book, which I thought was very entertaining, and I was so engaged by that point. And the second half of the book was like complete 5 stars. I really, really loved it. And I still don't know what the plot of the second book of the trilogy is, but I'm very curious about it. I'm very excited. I'm not going to read what the plot is for the second one. I'm just going to go into it blind like I did with this one. And I'm excited. Very, very excited. And after I finish the whole series, I'll come back just to tell you if I recommend the whole thing. Hopefully I will, but so far it's going really well. And then I finally picked up The Hero of Ages again, and I finished it. And on December 31st, I'm so happy that I could finish it in 2020. So I read the whole Mistborn trilogy last year, and it was a 5 stars. The whole series was a 5 stars. I highly recommend if you like epic, high fantasy. It's just so, so good. So the first one in this trilogy tells the story of Vin and Kelsier. They are trying to overthrow the Lord Ruler who's been ruling this land for 1,000 years. And we have this magic system that's based on metals, that people ingest different metals and they can have different powers depending on the metal that they ingest. Not everyone has a power. Most people can only ingest one metal, but we have the Mistborn who can ingest all the metals and can have all the powers. And then we go from there. This last one, a little bit like A Darker Shade of Magic. The first half, I thought it was going to, the book was going to disappoint me because it was very slow. I think the second and third book on the Mistborn trilogy could have been condensed in one 500-page novel. We didn't need, like, how long was this one? 748 pages. We didn't need that many pages. The second one was also way longer than it needed to be. So I think they could have been condensed in a shorter story. But, oh my god, the ending of this book, the ending of this trilogy, like the ending of each of the 3 books, they're just the best endings that I've ever read for any type of fantasy, at least, that I can remember. I laughed, I cried, I think it's one of the few books in the year that made me cry. And in the end, I was so attached to these characters. I loved them so much and I just wanted them to be happy. And everything was not going on a way that would make them happy. So I already knew that I was sad to get my heart broken, which happened. And I just love it. And I will continue with the second era, which, from what I understand, there's really nothing to do with this one. It's more a Western setting. So it's not a huge priority for me right now. But I'm excited to get back into this world, this universe, and just continue because it was so good. So definitely the best way to end the year. The best, I read a few 5 stars in December, so it was amazing. Let me know what you read in November, December, and if you also had a good ending to your reading year, because I would definitely love to know. And remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and thank you so much for joining me.